Glad to have you back. Now, the Nigerian economy might be in for a shocker if organized labor makes good its threat to go on indefinite strike in November.
The president of the Nigerian Labour Congress and the United Labour Congress say workers will down tools November the 6th unless government meets their 30,000 naira minimum wage demand.
Absolutely. Now, they are unhappy with the federal government and they are insisting that 24,000 naira, just a 6,000 naira increase on the current minimum wage of 18,000 naira won't be enough. Union leaders say there will be a day of national outrage and mourning in every state and the federal capital on October the 30th and a meeting on November the 2nd before the eventual strike.
Well, Labour initially demanded a 50,000 naira minimum wage before agreeing to 30,000 naira during negotiations. Jide Ologun is still here with us, and we have joining us Solomon Adeboshi as a member Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, CIPM. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Okay, so there's been a bone of contention between the Minister of Labour and Productivity and Labour unions as regards whether the tripartite committee reached an agreement over a figure. Now, Labour has said maybe it's time for the organized private, movement to talk about this. Thankfully, we have a quote from them. This is from the Director General Designate, Nigerian Employers Consultative Association. I'm quoting him now. We have a majority figure, which was 30,000 naira, which was what we all agreed on. However, there was a minority voice from the federal government that it would not be sustainable for government, and they proposed 24,000 naira. Would you say there was an agreement if there was a minority voice, which happens to be the federal government?
Well, thank you so much for this to be here. I think, when you talk about the negotiations like this, you'll have to also look at the most vulnerable employer, let me put it like that. The one that could be able to afford it the least. When you come to minimum wage, you need to consider, everybody is not on the same level. So you need to consider the person who is the smallest amongst us, how much can he afford to pay? The federal government probably might not have issues paying the 30,000 naira, but because it's not just about the federal government, it's also about the state governments, also about the small, medium scale enterprises. Will they be able to afford that amount? And that is why this kind of situation comes up. We need to be able to consider those kind of members too when talking about this kind of negotiation. So I think maybe that's why, even though you may call it a minority voice and a majority voice, those kind of scenario will always play out. You want to be sure that whatever we agree upon, is it affordable, is it reasonable, and can it be sustained? We already know the issue we have about the 18,000 minimum wage, that some states are saying we cannot even afford to pay. We know about states who have been owing for long. So when I want to jump to 30,000 naira, you still have to consider those kind of people too, and to look at it. How can they be able to afford this? Will they be able to sustain this in the long run? And I think that is what is the issue, right? All
right, Barrister Ologun, would you say that going on indefinite strike action would be the best solution to getting the federal government to do what you want? Talking about the labor now.
Strike action sometimes come as the last resort, and it's not the best, considering the fact that it should be a clamp down on the economy, even further denting the situation. But I'm tempted to ask a question this morning. We are talking about capacity, and it's been reported that within the same economy that we have, some earn as much as 29 million naira per month. So how do they sustain that? So why should it be possible and easy to take care of that, and it is impossible to take care of this? So I think it has to do with prioritization.
Are you literally saying that we should take from the rich to pay the poor?
I'm not saying that. I'm just thinking aloud that I suspect that we have borrowed to sustain a particular class in the society. And we are not ready to make any sacrifice to sustain another class. This is injustice. So as we are reviewing the minimum wage, can we also review the outrageous wage? I mean, we are talking of a society. Then I love to visit foundations. Why are we here? Because our economy is not vibrant. If, for example, I earn 18,000 naira per month, and there is power supply, talking about electricity, the public schools are functioning, I can take my child to a public hospital, I get attended to. After my career, I have access to my gratuity, my pension, whatever. What we call shared amenities are there. It reduces the burden on me. But where I have to practically operate like a government to myself, even if you increase it, even if the government says now that they will review to 65,500 naira, where they all started from, what can it handle in this economy? So I think my advice to Nigeria is let's begin to have strategy. Strategy is a military term, but in the business environment, it means a long-term plan for success. Singapore did it. In fact, one of the things Singapore did was to empower the workforce and pay them very well so that they won't have...
I'm talking about empowerment, really. How many of the civil servants in Nigeria are actually productive?
That's an issue for the government. Let me tell you, I did a research. There is a government, what they did was to empower the private sector to prosper, and they decided on the size of public sector that would be needed to collaborate with the private sector sustainably. And they did not embark on having a bloated workforce. But here we have situations where we have a dependent economy. I will explain that. Your uncle is in the House of Senate, he must take care of the whole family. So every slot for employment, they push their people there, whether they have things to do or not.
Perhaps that explains why we have to pay them more.
Because that is the choice we have made. That is the choice we have made. So can we regulate this society and make it work?
Okay. It's all right.
If not, we'll just be talking about change or no change or change and be changing and changing.
It's all right.
Let us look out of the window and see economies that are making progress.
You know, already
what have they done that we can do? And we embark on this.
Already the organized private sector, Solomon, assessed that if the organized labor goes on strike, they are going to be excluded from it. But the challenge here really is the question of whether the negotiation is comprehensive. The Nigeria Governors Forum is saying, well, we don't have a problem with a new minimum wage. But the fact is that some of us cannot pay. You know, evident in the fact that there are states that cannot even afford the 18,000 naira minimum wage as it is now. Would you say that Labour needs to engage stakeholders further as regards how this money will be paid to effect implementation, even if it's passed?
Yes, I will agree to that. You know, the beauty of the situation now is every party has agreed that there is a need for a review. And with that one, there is a common ground. Now, can we afford it? Like you asked, if whatever the Labour does, going on strike and everything, it will still end up in dialogue. No matter how long the strike will take, it will still end up in dialogue. So why don't we avoid going that way and now let's continue to discuss and dialogue. Let's, the way negotiations are done now is with facts and figures.
Organized labor is ready to dialogue. Is the federal government that is saying that it's not going to shift from the 24,000 naira it has put forward?
Now, you see, when it comes to that kind of scenario, the labor is saying we want 30,000. Government is saying it's 24,000. There can still be a middle ground. When everybody comes to discuss, you're going to suggest even strategies. What do you think? What other means can you be able to raise this money to be able to afford to pay it? Okay. What are the challenges that you are having? Like Barrister Ologun mentioned, there are some things that are being done that are not done rightly. And that is part of what the CIPM is also talking about. If there are situations where you are not a local government yourself, you have access to a lot of other social amenities, how much you are being paid may not really matter, because you know that whatever I'm being paid, there are some basic things that are sacrosanct. I'll be able to get them. But when you know that with all this money, even if, like you said, if you make it to be 65,500 naira, it will still end up, you might even end up going backwards.
Absolutely. Like you said, now you're an expert in personnel management. So let us understand. The Minister of Labour, Christine Gige, said that employees cannot dictate their salaries to their employers. The employers have the right, of course, to set the amount for payment. So that put in focus, plus what both of you have said, that if other necessary social amenities are available.
Yes.
So who is now somehow not contravening the law, but maybe the human law really, that if you tie an animal down, it behoves on you to feed that animal well.
Yes.
So what do you think?
Yeah, I think that is the reason for us asking for this continuous dialogue. Sometimes when you are looking at it from your own perspective, you may not be able to see what the other person is seeing. So the process of dialogue makes it possible for you to be able to let the other person see, look, this is what I'm looking at. What if you're able to address these issues, probably we might be able to now also look at this. Can you do something about this? What can you do about it? Is there any plan to do something about this? When those kind of things are put in place, then it becomes very easy for both parties to be able to see from the perspective of each other.
I'm just wondering really what indices and what factors determine how much a worker should be paid. In this climb, first, you are even lucky to have gotten a job. So your employer looks in the face and say, this is how much I'm paying you. Most people do not even have the privilege of the negotiation. What should be the standard procedure, really?
The standard procedure is a life empowering reward. This wage, what can it sustain? The International Labour Organization is talking about what can give you a meaningful life. Now, let's come to the issues on ground now. We're talking of a negotiation table. So there's a minister who is coming with the paraphernalia of office. Even coming for that meeting, his allowance alone is enough to pay maybe about 1,000 minimum wages, And that is why he can say that they cannot dictate to them how much to pay. We hold the law and say, no work, no pay. Why don't we say no work when there's no pay? If you are saying, if you don't work, I won't pay you, why don't you also say, using the same law, that if I don't pay you, you are not supposed to work for me? So we still have that imbalance. And that is why I'm advising. We may not like it when we say this, that go and see economies that are functioning. What have they done? All countries have their problems, but they prioritize. What have they done? They have valued the workforce. And it is possible in this country. Politicians value people when they need votes. They come to them, they visit the villages, they put their hands in the air, they dance, they sweep.
They give them money.
They do everything, but they get in there. It's a different ball game. And a wise man said, when the government fears the people, it is good governance. When the people fear the government, it is bad governance. So can we really sit down? Let's even forget about minimum or no minimum, and sit down and be comfortable that comparing what I earn to what this person is earning, is it just? Let me ask you a question. There are those who will serve as governor for 4 years, they leave that office, they have their pensions, reportedly, maybe a house in your state where you served, another one in Abuja in case you need to go to Abuja. You get your Prado, maybe on 2 years basis. You go to Senate, you retire from there also, you collect your, so this is a societal imbalance. We cannot continue with this and expect national development.
All right, let me come to you, Solomon, really, because this is your turf, and I would really love for you to talk about that as well. What is the international best practice when it comes to setting remuneration for a workforce, especially in the civil service? What is the government expected to do? Because earlier you talked about the need for the two parties to come together. That has been done. All the parties came together, but yet there's this rancor.
The ILO expects living wage, what is called a living wage.
Not even a minimum wage.
No, yeah, it's a living wage. Wage that will be able to make your life good. You may not be able to afford some luxuries, but at least you should be able to live a decent life. And that is what the ILO encourages.
Is it limited to how much you earn or the value of what you earn?
That is what we're talking about. It is not about how much you earn. It has to do a lot to do with all these other social amenities that must be there. Because when you have all these things, that you hear about, he said, oh, in advanced countries, you pay tax as much as 40% of what you're earning. But they know that when they get old, it's like you have saved for your future.
And it seems the economy is going to play a vital role when it comes to setting any wage, really, for any public worker in any society, because it boils down to the value of the currency as well.
Apparently.
Because we already know how our currency is when you relate it to other currencies in the world. And so, if you want to compare it, you say, oh, in that place they paid about so dollars. So if you compare this one, this is less than $2. It may not work in that way, because you cannot be able to picture how those ones in that economy, the kind of things that they do. Here, you pay for a lot of things for yourself. If you are driving your vehicle, you know that it's going to take you a lot to even service the vehicle again because of the bad roads. Right. So there's some monies that you need to set aside for that. So that's why you might hear that they are clamoring for, oh, you give us more money, give us more money. But we also know that the moment the more money comes in, the market force is also, the market woman says, yeah, you've got more money, why should I not also get? Because nobody is planning minimum wage for me. So when I hear that, oh, they've increased their pay, then these tomatoes that used to be 200 naira, why don't I make it 250 naira now?
Inflation sets in.
And then inflation sets in. So really, we should be clamoring more for these social amenities to be provided, so that when we have this, if actions are taken on, we want these kind of things to be provided for us. When you make us a promise during elections and say these are the things you want to do, we want to be able to rate you based on those promises that you have made to us.
So Jide painted a picture earlier, a scenario where certain government workers do not only get their basic pay, they get clothing allowance, they get newspaper allowance and all of that. But who has the responsibility to make things fair? Because even if a new minimum wage is agreed upon, the president or the presidency will have to send it as a bill to the National Assembly. How do you get the National Assembly to make things fair? It's like you're taking money from me and you expect me to sign that into law?
You are going to the angle of public relations in government. Part of leadership is, characteristics is charisma and the ability to lobby. If you look at the U.S., it's not been easy for Donald Trump, but you trust that man.
Gets it done,
find his way around. And that is why we are calling for synergy. And that is why what is happening in this country is disturbing. You see, you saw what happened at the National Assembly when Marx policemen just woke up one morning and besieged that hallowed chamber. And this is the singular arm of democracy. Because in a military regime, you have the Supreme Military Council and the judiciary. So, and this arm that represents democracy became threatened. You see, the same thing that happened yesterday. So rather than using force, which is the rule of might, engage the rule of law. You know, I like to use the flight example. There is a presiding captain flying an aircraft to destination to coordinate all those who are supporting that flight. And they announced to thank you and hope you have enjoyed your flight. We hope to have you next time. So we need to go back to definitions. Who is presiding over the affairs of the country? It's important. What resources are available? We have the MDAs, the agencies. How do I coordinate them to achieve results? Knowing that at the end of the day, my name will be tagged.
But then we have all this set out, really. We know who is in charge of the affairs of the country. We know all the parastatals, all the agencies, all the nooks and crannies of the country. But then that's why many people would say that it boils down, at the end of the day, to the political will to do things.
Who has genuinely. Political will? Mr. Solomon made a brilliant point. You see, we were taught in business that you don't promise what you cannot fulfill. So when you bring promises, I will benchmark you with the promises. Life is continuum. Succession means nobody can solve all the problems in this regime. So let's roll them over and thank God for those we have solved. Then you improve on what is handed over to you. How you do that, you must have prepared for. And you must be guided by
but
the
this
promises you have made.
administration is doing all what you just said. It's trying to improve on, the minimum wage. It's met 18,000 naira, which was supposed to have been reviewed since 2016. Regardless of the amount that has been added to the 18,000 naira, is still a movement, like you're saying.
Yes.
Is the administration not doing
But
that?
let's see what we derail that.
Okay.
The pump price of PMS, premium motor spirits, petrol, was 87 naira. It moved to 143, 145, and during crisis, maybe 200, 250. Dollar was 190 naira. It now hovers around 360 and 358. At the time, it moved up to 520. You see, as we speak now, many Nigerians don't have prepaid meters. So they have been fighting over estimated billing. You want to talk about potable water. You want to talk about hunger, deliberately created hungers. Because when farmers are killed and chased away from their farms, who produces? You see, and you now bring the issue of natural force, like the floods we are having around the country. It may amaze you that there's a country in this world that has food security that can take them for the next 20 years.
20 years. Yeah.
So that is the essence of government policies. Sit down. How can we improve? And there shouldn't be excuses. Nobody has forced anybody to come into office. I don't think I can carry the burden of Nigeria. That's why I'm not going out there to say, let me carry it. Exactly. So if you are saying you can carry it, please carry it well. I just asked a question now. Are we debating that senators have not been paid? Or cannot be paid? So we need to bring all these things into a holistic capsule and see how we can help Nigeria.
I'm looking at the figures now because we have to wrap this up now. Solomon, if the organized private sector is offering to pay more, even than the federal government, way higher than what state governments offer, maybe we should just privatize all these government agencies so that the organized the private sector can pay. Well, what way forward at such a time as this?
I understand you, and I appreciate that. Of course, even now, organized private sector has been paying far more, far above that. And I think that's the reason why a lot of the times the government is doing what they call the public-private partnership. Let us do it together. Let's work together. I think if the government involves the private sector more, there are a lot of things that will be done better. In the private sector, you made a comment about productivity. That is something that you don't joke about in the private sector.
Apparently.
You must be productive. We are not going to just employ you because we need to fill this space. If this space is empty, but we don't have the right fit into it, we leave it empty. We are not going to just put somebody there.
Okay. Solomon Adeboshim, the member Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, CIPM, thank you for coming. And Barrister Jide Ologun, you're a lawyer, of course, and public affairs analyst.
Thank you.
Thank you for your analysis.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
All right.
Thank you so much.